President Trump is on the move, and his first stop was Saudi Arabia. But the Saudis have long been suspected of providing the finance and safe harbour needed to cause the 9/11 terror attacks in New York and Washington. But Trump did not talk of Saudi Arabia's promotion of Wahhabism and Takfirism around the world. He was also silent on the arming and funding of terrorists in Syria and beyond. Instead, he promised the Saudis a good deal from US defence companies.
The Saudis have also attracted criticism from much of the Muslim world because Trump had previously made offensive comments about Muslims and Islam. Seeing Trump being greeted with warmth by the Saudi regime offended many in the global Islamic community, just as Trump himself attracted criticism for starting his tour in Saudi Arabia. Trump did not mention atrocities committed in Yemen by Saudi Arabia either. Instead, he used the opportunity to attack the Islamic Republic of Iran and blamed them for all of the troubles within the Persian Gulf. Critics say that the display President Trump put on in Riyadh is what happens when the US makes good relations with its business clients the top priority. As such, the general public internationally observed the absence of criticism of the Saudis' behaviour, no matter how deserved such criticism might be, and its replacement with considerable flattery and mutual ego massage. Those concerned with human rights violations had little to celebrate.
Why does Trump criticise Iran but not Saudi Arabia? And what do arms sales by America to the Saudis do to America's image internationally? Simple questions with important answers. Now, Trump visited Saudi Arabia and engaged closely with the regime, offering them business deals. However, he did not challenge them on their very poor human rights record. In the opinion of the American public, why not?
Try to keep it more into the realm of business instead of the realm of getting into the more political side. During the visit, I believe he's trying to convey a message of unity based on the consequences that are happening here in the United States. So for him to say about human rights might be a step into the wrong direction where he's trying to convey a message of unity and peace.
I honestly don't know. I didn't watch it a little bit. I think from my perspective, it wasn't all that surreal to me at all.
We've had a terrible policy for quite some time in the Middle East that's put us in a situation that we have to take a leadership role right now.
Well, it's because Donald Trump wants to do what George W. Bush and past Republican presidents did, continue to make business deals with the Saudis.
Probably establish a relationship in his first term.
He may not be fully aware of the issues in Saudi Arabia.
First things first. He's going to do first things first. First you establish relations, then you move on to the more important stuff.
I think that's because he's not somebody that America likes representing them. He's not a good leader. I think he's more of a businessman than a leader, and I think that his priorities really showed.
Well, Trump's trip to Saudi Arabia was organized to pump up this regime and to sort of milk some resources, to get some resources from the Saudi government. And it wasn't really meant to be anything to do with human rights, justice, creating a better world. I mean, just imagine if anyone, the leader of the most powerful nation in the world, the first trip it does overseas goes to see a bunch of a royal family which are dictators. They commit atrocities, they commit war crimes, and they're known around the world for those behavior. I mean, it's very obvious that this is nothing to do with anything except pounds and pennies, in this case dollars, and really it shows the characteristic of Trump, really.
So for so many years, we've been told by absolute fools that Trump is somehow our savior against terrorism, against extremism. Somehow he's going to stop the wars. And this is absolute nonsense. Trump is the president of the United States. He's one of the most far-right presidents that the United States has ever seen. Of course, he's going to continue with that which the Democratic government was using and that which the Republican Party before with Bush. And we can go back further and further. Both the Democrats and the Republicans, especially with the Republicans, with a far-right maniac like Donald Trump, of course he's going to use his assets like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to conduct his foreign policy. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is one of the most important junior partners for the United States and the United Kingdom in promoting their hegemonic and their divisive and their frankly state terroristic policies throughout the Muslim world. Trump was absolutely going to continue a close relationship with the primary ally in the so-called phony war on terror, that is Riyadh. This was a no-brainer, clearly.
Does the American public think that by selling so many weapons to Saudi Arabia, while that regime destroys Yemen, the US further damages its image around the world?
I believe it's a term of national security. If he's doing this type of action or type of negotiation, there has to be something that we're not known to the public that is more in detail of national security and not in the realm of the public's eyes yet.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's just totally hypocritical, right? I mean, you're selling. I think it's terrible. Yeah.
Yes, it does. I believe so.
But I don't think as much people know about what goes behind the I would say the scenes. You know, they don't know. So, but if they wouldn't know, of course, it would damage the image of the U.S.
It could very well, yes.
Yeah, I believe so. I think that I think that the U.S. is a very prideful country, and I think that the U.S. likes to always play the good guy and be the hero, but I think that that's not always the route to go, and I think that there are certain times where there are more diplomatic approaches, and selling weapons usually isn't that the correct approach, in my opinion.
This trip to Saudi Arabia, if it wasn't for the fact that they sold so many weapons, which is going to be used to commit war crimes in Yemen and to create havoc and to kill innocent people, women, children, and people who, you know, Yemen is one of the poorest nations in the world and has been bombed out of existence almost. There is a cholera, and you know the disaster that is taking place is unimaginable. If it wasn't because of that, this trip would have been sort of funny. But we can't laugh at it because the result of this trip is more killing, more war crime, and more suffering of innocent people in Yemen and elsewhere.
The industry, the economy of militarism is absolutely central to Western imperialism for many generations. It's one of the central money-making scams. It's one of them. It's not even a scam. It's just the illogic rationale of the system that it needs to use mercenary organizations and companies, which is part of the security industry, which is attached to the military-industrial complex. This is a major industry. It's the industry of death and torture and pillage and injury. So again, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is a big buyer. It's a big market for this industry. So of course Trump was going to go and make one of the biggest arms deals in the world. And what's the consequence of that? Indeed, more carnage in Syria, more carnage in Yemen, more carnage in Libya, etc., etc. You can speak to Western experts and scholars in the mainstream. They will tell you time and time again that the regime in Riyadh is the main junior partner for the export of terrorism in partnership with the West across the Muslim world. This is the industry that they're involved in.
Trump seems very hostile and critical of Iran, but he does not show that criticism towards Saudi Arabia. Why, in the public's view, does he express such opposing views regarding these two countries?
Capital has to do with money connections. and I think they support him more than Iran does.
Well, I think one's an ally and one isn't. One we have business dealings with and one we really don't. So I think he just plays how he's supposed to, as far as that's concerned.
Well, because Iran is one of the leading producers or supporters and financiers of terrorism in the world today.
Look, I think Saudi Arabia has been a long time ally of United States, and that's possibly why there's a softer view.
I don't think Saudi Arabia is we're seen as a nuclear threat to the world peace, and I think Iran could be and is a great exporter of terror.
I believe he has more business ties to Saudi Arabia than he does to Iran, and that's why he's a little biased. I think his opinions are. I think he's very financially driven, and I think that unfortunately that kind of bleeds into his political campaign, the way that he operates and the way that he wants to run the country, and unfortunately. Like I said before, that's how he's represented across, overseas, and that's unfortunate.
If you look at Trump, from the time that he was campaigning and so forth, you see that, he is really an Islamophobe. He is an Islamophobe with the bells on. And, when you look at not just him, but when you look at all the people around him, you see that he is actually a Zionist right the way through. And the fact that he's coming up with these sort of messages out is, one, because of his Islamophobia nature of him. Two, because he's a businessman. He's just after pounds and pennies, and he could get that sort of money from the Saudis and the Persian Gulf states. And three is his relationship with Netanyahu. Is so strong, then it could only result in him sort of disliking Iran. And it again is a testimony of the fact that Trump leadership in the United States is not interested in human rights, is not interested in democracy, is not interested in stopping the havoc around the world, is not interested in stopping terrorism. As even he himself said before become elected, that the Saudis are actually one of the elements of promoting terrorism in the region.
The Islamic Republic of Iran, despite the many contradictions which there are in the region, remains the most important obstacle and barrier to total imperialist domination and divide and ruin in the Middle East and in the larger Muslim world. So, yes, Donald Trump and the regime in London is going to see Iran as a strategic enemy, as a strategic threat. And this is a long-standing relationship that goes back over 2 centuries between London and the Wahhabi supremacist forces that have become a state. It was the Britain who actually constructed the state along with Ibn Wahhab and the Saud family in the Arabian Peninsula. So this relationship is not new. It's not going to go away anytime soon, because in their own interests, it's very effective. Iran and its allies is the obstacle, and there's other resistance forces as well. So they will continue to see Tehran as a strategic enemy to which they will develop a war strategy. Let's remind ourselves that Trump already threatened in his first weeks in the presidency a war with Iran. He bombed Syria. He went to the brink of war with China. He went to the brink of war with Korea. We have to understand this threat, this fascicization of the imperialist leadership that's being led in the fascist global revolution by Britain and the United States for what it is. It's a danger, it's an increased danger to world humanity.
Trump revealed the US recently signed a $108 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia, amounting to a total investment of more than $350 billion over 10 years. Yet, according to 28 recently declassified pages from the US 911 Commission's official report, at the time of the attacks in 2001, Saudi Arabia funded Takfiri radicalism in mosques and charities. 15 of the 19 hijackers involved in the 911 attacks in America were Saudis. and 3 had histories of employment with the oil-rich kingdom. The attacks killed nearly 3,000 people.
Many in the US blame Saudi Arabia for the 9/11 attacks in New York and in Washington. How does the public think the 9/11 victims' families felt about Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia?
I can't personally speak for the victims because I wasn't part of that. I send my condolences to the victims of 9/11. I believe those opinions have to be said by the people who were affected by 9/11. Can't be said by people outside of the realm.
You get so many conspiracy theories. You get a video over here saying that it was U.S. You get another video that says Saudi Arabia. You honestly don't know. You don't know who to believe. But from going through that perspective, living in here, it looks, I don't know, it looks maybe kind of shady.
It all depends on what side of the political spectrum you fall on, I would think. If you're a Democrat, probably didn't like it very much. If you're a Republican, you probably liked it quite a bit. While there were Saudis involved in 9/11, they weren't the masterminds of the event.
They might have had mixed feelings about it, but we've had relations with Saudi Arabia through the Bush administration as well, and that occurred with under his watch, 9/11.
Okay. This country is very divided, and there are people that are very supportive of Trump, and then there are people that are just as against Trump. And this country is also has the people that are for Trump tend to be a little bit more closed-minded, and I think that those people may not fully understand the diplomatic approach.
I don't think it's just a victim of 9/11. Which incidentally is fact that overwhelming majority of those who committed 9/11 were Saudi citizens, but it's actually many victims around the world. I mean, it is very clear the support that Saudis and the other Gulf states are giving Daesh. This has been well documented. In those emails of Clinton, it was very clearly there. Trump turned around and actually said at the time of election to Clinton that she should give the money back to the Saudis that she received because this is blood money and they are involved in acts of terrorism. So this is very clear. I mean, he's not, Trump cannot act as a fool. And indeed, ordinary citizens in United States and citizens around the world are going to see this as a direct support of act of terrorism. And we could see it very clearly as soon as he left. The attack and the atrocities escalated in Bahrain against ordinary innocent people. So these are actual results of his trip and his appeasement and arming a very dangerous dictatorship.
I think the victims' families of 9/11 will have different views about Trump's visit to the regime in Riyadh. But let's go back to the issue and the central C word, which is collusion. It's well documented, especially in the book by Mark Curtis called Secret Affairs. The relationship, and he focuses on Britain's relationship in colluding, that's using and abusing, manipulating, containing and directing these death squads, these terrorist groups, including Nusra, including Daesh, including others. They utilize these to deliver their own strategic interests. So I think the victims or families of terrorism in the West need to be studying and looking into collusion. It's a complex issue. It's not the case that Theresa May and Trump make a phone call and a bomb goes off in London or Paris or Berlin or New York, etc. It's not like that. But there's a close relationship. There's a manipulative relationship that you can see in especially with Libya in 2011 and in Syria since 2011 till today. It's an open relationship where London and Washington have a relationship with terrorist groups, openly, overtly in the case of Libya and Syria, and covertly in the cases of Nusra, but it's not even very covert when it comes to Nusra al-Qaeda. But with Daesh, you have to study this, and collusion is the key to unlocking the mysteries of all of this.
Some believe Trump may get impeached due to his conduct towards the FBI's investigations related to him. Could these foreign visits be an attempt to distract the public from the turmoil surrounding Trump right now? We asked the public.
I don't think so. The visits have to be made. We have to keep the connections with the foreign countries. I think if an impeachment does happen, it will be because of the people surrounding him.
Yes, I guess so. Okay. I guess so. Yeah, because his procedure, his way of ruling us, I think that, and I hope that he'll be impeached one day.
Perhaps, yes. Yeah, perhaps it could be. Definitely, yeah.
I do. I honestly do. I honestly do think they're trying to distract you from everything that's really going on, that we gotta face the facts.
No, not at all. Not remotely. No.
No, I believe that it is part of his agenda before or after the FBI was even involved with anything. I don't believe it's a distraction or displacement of any news attention.
Okay. Not really. I think that it's just an extremely busy schedule. It's just one of the things he said he was going to do. So.
No, I don't think so. I think he's fulfilling his obligations as president and trying to drive America's image forward in the world generally.
Yes, I think that the entire Trump administration is surrounded with controversy and is constantly battling that. Is constantly fighting to restore its public image, and I think that they constantly are trying to come up with new ways to distract the public from what's actually happening.
Well, I think it's always very helpful to have a distraction of some sort, and sort of if things are not going well in the country, politicians always have concentrated on distracting people with something overseas. But having said that, I actually think that Trump's behavior right the way through is so comical, is so knee-jerk, is so contradiction. You know, he contradicts himself not just in a week, but in a day or even in a couple of hours. So I actually think that, yes, he's trying to sort of distract people, but then, you know, he has been behaving that way all the time. And I think even Trump doesn't know what he's going to do when he gets up in the morning, and he sort of he decides as it goes on, his policies and his behavior. And that seems to be his character.
Trump's foreign visit is also about the growing divisions in the US ruling circles and between different factions of the US ruling circles and other ruling circles. So for example, Britain and the United States both have bickering, divided ruling factions. It seems that a section of the British ruling class is allied to the anti-Trump section of the US ruling class. So you have these divisions opening up. You have Merkel and Macron openly bickering with Britain, the United States. This is something we have never seen in our lifetime, hasn't been seen for many generations. So this is a fallout. And Trump is going around the world and he's stamping his authority. He's bullying other Western leaders. And Western leaders are not appreciating, and they're paying him back in divisive, conflictive talk as well. Where is this all headed? We have leading imperialist nations falling out with each other. Where is this headed? The First World War, Second World War was the culmination of where that headed then. So where is it headed now? Is there anything different to pre-1914 or pre-1939 today? I don't think so. We're clearly headed down that path once again. This is another danger to humanity. This is another emergency call to the people of the world to stop this trajectory going down the route of these people are going to send us to die in our millions so they can remain and keep developing their riches.
Donald Trump has been very critical of Islam and Muslims, and even attempted to prevent Muslims from entering America. Yet his first stop in his global tour was Saudi Arabia to give a speech on Islam. At the same time as lecturing Muslim countries on how to conduct their affairs, he was happy to sign a major arms deal with Saudi Arabia.
President Trump has often been accused of inconsistency, seeking to exclude Muslims from the United States and then making his first international visit to a Muslim country eager to buy American military hardware suggests to many that for President Trump, money speaks louder than words, consistency, or indeed anything else.